Welcome, everybody, to Pricing Strategies. I'm going to introduce you to a methodology that I call value-based pricing. It's a way to price your services and products that is authentic. Pricing is one of those things that's a science and an art. It's both of those. It's not one or the other. It is tricky, and it does require an iterative process. Shifco basically trains what we call conscious entrepreneurs. I'll explain a little bit more about what that is. We train you how to grow your business and maximize your impact. And 88.9% of the members who have used our platform double their revenue. And we also have around a 97. It fluctuates. Sometimes it's a little bit higher, sometimes it's a little lower, but it's averaged about 97% retention of our members, which is pretty awesome. And it's because of a commitment to impact, which is helping you grow your business, but also the value that you receive in Shifco. My background and why I'm so fortunate to get to serve Shifco members is I've been a serial entrepreneur for almost 25 years. It's hard to believe it's been that long. I've had multiple exits. What an exit is when you sell your business. One of those included an initial public offering on the NASDAQ stock exchange. And then in 2009, I sold my last business and started over with this crazy idea. There had to be a way to do good and make money. And so I put my business growth skills to work now, doing nothing but growing good things. We have what we call a speculator fund, which is like a family office that does investments. One of our investments is in the world's first zero waste makeup and skincare line. I'm a huge fan of this product. And I absolutely love this brand. I love what they're up to. I love the quality of the product, but it's 100% zero waste, and that's Your Izzy. So that's an example of a speculator investment that we've made. We also have what we call the cultivator, and the cultivator creates companies. Succeed on Purpose was the first company that I created, followed by Ignite on Purpose, Promote on Purpose, and then 5 years ago, we created Shifco. And so I have a team of people that run those brands for me. I lead the speculator fund side on the investment. And then in the case of Shifco, I spend about 70% of my time serving Shifco members because I'm so incredibly passionate about serving conscious businesses and love doing that. So let me just get this. We had a little spammer try to get in, so I'm just kicking them out. So that's a little bit about my background and what kind of brings me to this point. Now let's get into the reason why you're here. But I want to set up when we talk about value-based pricing, it's actually part of a whole business model strategy that we teach in Shifco. And a value-based business model is related to something called conscious business. Conscious business, I believe, is actually a business model. Some people consider it a movement. Some people consider it a fad. Some people consider it a concept. I see it as a business model as much as it is a movement. What do I mean by that? Well, a traditional business, when they launch a product, they say, well, how much will somebody buy this product that I have? When a conscious business launches a product, saying, let me just get these guys out of here. When a conscious business launches a product, much like Your Izzy did, is they don't think about whether or not somebody will buy it. The question they're asking themselves is, will it solve a problem? When Your Izzy came out with the first zero waste skincare line, so they already had makeup, they launched skincare. They were trying to solve a problem that the majority of waste, personal products, so makeup and skincare and lotions, are the second biggest pollutant in the world. The first is water bottles, and we all know how bad that is. So the founder of Your Izzy said, I don't want to just sell a product that people will buy. I want to sell a product that actually solves a problem. In this case, all of the waste that's out there. So that's an example of a conscious business model. It's starting your product to solve a specific problem. When it comes to pricing, a traditional business says, what will someone pay? And a conscious business says, how much is it worth? They price it based on value, which I'm going to show you how to do that today. And then when it comes to success, a traditional business, the world is littered with examples of this. My current nemesis right now is Expedia. And I'm very anti Expedia right now because they have a not conscious business model. And they are about all the money that they can make. And a lot of their practices are very inauthentic and very manipulative. And so I'm kind of anti that right now. And there's other examples. Everybody should probably have your own. But a conscious business model says, hey, can we make a difference in the world? And they manage their success based on the difference that they're making. And there's two other concepts related to what makes a conscious business model. I'm not going to get into that right now, but you can see that these things are very different. Of course, today we're here to talk about pricing. And the challenge with having a conscious business model and the challenge with pricing is what you're really trying to do is you're trying to balance purpose and profit. And it's a tricky balance. I thought it was going to be a piece of cake when I started this in 2009. I thought, I'm a growth expert. Anybody can do this. Man, I found it was one of the hardest things I've ever done because it's tricky to balance these two aspects. They're not easy to balance together. And so the balance is, do I focus on growth and profit? Okay, yeah, we all want that. Or do I focus on making a difference? And we see this as an or. The truth is, it's an and. The challenge is sometimes you have to put your purpose first, and sometimes you have to put growth and profit first. What do I mean by that? Well, there's times when I actually sped up the growth of one of our businesses because it was time to really grow. And then there are times when I slowed down the growth of our businesses because we weren't in alignment with our purpose. And I'm making that trade off day to day, week to week, month to month. So I'd like to have you guys collaborate a little bit and put some answers in the chat. Lisa is going to help me. She's going to be my virtual Vanna or my voice Vanna, and she's going to shout out what you say. But pricing is at the center of the focus between growth and profit and making a difference. So why does pricing seem hard to you? So I'm going to pause and let you put things in the chat, and then Lisa's going to read those out to us.
All right, they're starting to come in. Not sure of competitor pricing. What's fair pricing to me may not align with clients. I don't have a comp. Don't know where to start. Fear, not understanding the market. Ooh, they're really flowing now. Wonder if something's being left on the table. Fear of losing clients. I don't have a good sense of what it's worth. New product not previously offered, not sure how to price by time. It's too subjective. Boy, there's a bunch in here. It's coming in fast and furious. Is that enough?
That's great. So for those comments, you're going to get the answers to those questions today. I'm going to show you how to do the things that you described are hard. And I want though to put it into perspective. One of my favorite conscious leaders is a guy named James Creedon. He is the deputy managing partner for impact initiatives at Scale LLP. Net, he's an attorney. And he is passionate about conscious business models. And I remember hearing him speak at one of our events, and he said, look, this balance between purpose and profit, it's a real thing. But what you have to remember is no money, no mission. And what that means is if your business isn't growing and your business isn't growing profitably, you're not going to be able to make the impact that you want to make. And that was what I found as well, is when I started this in 2009, I was doing all of these different things. I was trying to save the world, but I wasn't actually making money. And it took me about 6 years to figure out how to balance purpose and profit so that I made money, but I still made a difference. Pricing is one of those areas, and that's what we're going to work on. So frequently when people join Shiftco, one of the reasons why they join Shiftco is because they're trying to figure out their pricing. It's like, okay, Terry, I get the why I need to price based on value. I get that it's a balance between purpose and profit and growth and impact. But how on earth do you do it? So I'm going to show you what that methodology is that we teach. So I want to start first with the fact that there's two very well-known pricing models. Both of these are well-known. Businesses use these all the time. The first one is called market-based pricing. It's priced at what the market will bear, what they're willing to pay. I happen to be a fan of Apple. Not everybody is, but I happen to be a fan of Apple. And I absolutely love my Apple Watch. I love my Apple phone. I just got my new Apple 17. I'm excited about that. I love these little earbud things, man. Man, these are, and I've tried every kind under the sun. I like these the best. Apple knows that they have a high value, and so they are priced at the top end of the market. So they know that their customers loyal and their customers willing to pay more for an Apple product. Sure enough, when Apple announced all of their new releases, the phone, the new watch, these new little guys here, I was tuned into the TV, paying attention to the video, and I'm planning out when I'm going to be able to afford my new Apple products. I also know I'm paying market-based pricing, okay? The opposite end of that, and by the way, market-based pricing is what is a buyer willing to pay, okay? And Apple knows that I'm willing to pay X for this product, and it's now on my wish list. Cost plus is the other pricing model. Cost plus is cost plus margin profit. An example of this is Mark Cuban's cost plus drugs. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Mark Cuban said, hey, this pharmaceutical model is messed up. People are paying too much for their various pills and medicine, and it doesn't need to be that way. And so he launched a business called Cost Plus. They publicize what the cost of each prescription is and what their markup is, and it's a fair markup. So those two things are the most common pricing models. Market-based, which is what someone is willing to pay, and cost plus, which is cost plus margin. So now the first question, before we get into the third option I'm going to introduce you to, which is what I teach, and that's called a value-based pricing model. You first have to figure out what are buyers willing to pay? What are buyers willing to pay? And I'm also going to show you how to figure out your cost plus, but you need to know these two avenues. You need to know what the market's willing to pay, and you need to know what the cost plus is in order to develop your pricing strategy. Well, here's how you're going to do that. First, you have to determine the cost to make your product or service, which I'm going to show you how to do today. The second thing is you've got to mark that up by 60 to 100% and include the costs you haven't considered. And here's what that looks like. But let me go back to one thing with this floor and ceiling. One is you have to figure out what your buyer is willing to pay. Then you have to figure out the cost plus and go through those three steps, which we're going to go through in a minute. Well, here's my little secret on figuring out what buyers are willing to pay. Go search for your category. So if I search for business growth, training, and coaching, I am going to get all of my competitors and I can basically look at what their published prices are. If they don't have published pricing, I do what I call secret shopping. And I basically reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking to purchase these services. Can you tell me what your pricing is? I ask them questions. Most of the time, they give it to me willingly. Most of the time, it's published on their website, not always. But that's how you figured out what is the market-based pricing. So let's say you sell pens. Go search for people that are selling pens and see what the price is. It's not hard to do. And then if they don't have a price listed, basically reach out to them and say, do you have a pricing schedule? I want to know what their product is priced at. Easy to do. Anybody can do that. So that's market-based pricing. You've got to know that. And I know that my competitors charge way more than I charge, okay, on the high end. Think of the high end as the ceiling, and then cost plus you've got to figure out next. So that's the first thing you've got to do is you have to figure out what buyers are willing to pay. And the way in which you do that is you do a Google search for your product category. You look and see what people are offering. You can secret shop a few of those and find out what it is they're doing. Net, you figure out what people are willing to pay. That's what I call the ceiling. Cost plus is a little bit trickier. So cost plus is really figuring out what does it actually cost. And in order to do that, it's three steps. I'm going to show you how to do it. You have to determine your actual cost to make your product or service. Second, you want to mark that up by 60 to 100%. I know that always throws conscious founders off, like that much of a markup? Yes. And the reason is there are so many costs that you have not calculated in your business. I can't even begin to tell you how many costs you have not considered. There's your website, there's marketing materials, there's networking events you're going to go to, there's the coach that you need to pay, there's the accountant who's going to manage your books, there's the taxes you forgot to put in, there's office supplies. There's all of these things that you forget. There's so many costs related to starting up a business, and we forget to calculate those, and then we undercut our price. So I'm going to show you how to do this here in a minute. So now you determine the cost to make your product or service. You mark that up by 60 to 100%, including all the costs you haven't considered to make sure that you've got enough profit. Here's what that would look like. So let's say that I have a training business and I am developing training and I'm like, okay, my salary, if I were making $60,000 a year, that's $50 an hour for my salary. I'm going to go ahead and mark that up 100% and I'm going to make a $50 profit. So for every hour I put into this, I'm going to charge $100 per hour. $100 per hour. That is called 100% markup. All right. And I would encourage you to start with 100%. You can always back off of it. Start with 100% first. And so, all right, now, okay, great. I'm developing this program. It's going to take me 10 hours to develop the content. All right, there we go. It's going to take me 10 hours to deliver it for this program. But I'm also going to have time to support the students. And so you can see now this total price, 1,000 and 1,000 is 2. So here's 1,000 and 1,000 is 2. Now we add another 500. Now it's 2,500. Oh, I got $100 in technology costs that I didn't know. My website has to be hosted. Zoom costs me $20 a month, yada, yada, yada. And so now I'm already at $2,600 for this program, $2,600 for this program, just in my costs before I actually really think about real profit in there. But what if I want to market it? Whoa, my marketing costs, man, marketing is one of the most expensive pieces. And I can always tell when a company spends too much money on marketing because their product is always overpriced. And if you're paying for an overpriced product, you're actually paying for their marketing. I'm a big fan of trying to show our members how not to have high marketing costs because it allows you to be more competitive. So here I am, and my range now for this program is my cost is $2,600 to $4,100. If my target is to have 12 students in this program, then 216 is what they would need to pay for this program. But if I have marketing in there, it's 341 before I've put in much profit. Whoa, never even thought about it like that. So this is what we call the floor, right? And the floor is I have to cover these costs to even remotely cover my costs. Then you go back and you compare that to what is the market willing to pay. For this same course, let's say it's an AI course that I've developed, and I'm over here and I calculate that per student, if I had 12 people in the program, would be somewhere between 216 to 341 without a lot of profit built in. But I look at what my competitors are charging, they're charging 750. That is what we call the value difference between these two. Let me show you what that looks like. So you can see what it looks like. And hopefully you're kind of calculating some of these for your businesses. Before I go to a product example, I want to show how we did this in Shiftco. So when we started Shiftco, we knew that the majority of people that were hiring training and coaching pay 1,000 or more a month. I always thought that that was ridiculous. It was like you're not getting $1,000 of value. So we basically calculated all of the costs. What does it cost for the mentors we provide? What does it cost for the specialty coaches? What does it cost for the system and the technology that we use? And that's how we calculated our price. And then we put a profit margin in there. And right now, for a very reasonable rate, our coaches get paid, our mentors get paid, our systems get paid, and we have profit left over, which we then can invest in new things. But we don't spend a lot of money. We don't spend much money at all on marketing. That is one of the reasons why we can be competitive because we don't spend a lot of money on marketing. So that's an example of what we mean. And I'm going to show you a product and then I'm going to talk about the strategy and then we're going to do an example for you. Here's a product. This was the first product I invested in, which I lost money on, and I learned a valuable lesson. And I loved this actual product. The product was called Polka Dots. And if you've ever hung pictures and you know how hard it is to get it level, what Polka Dots was is they had this little piece of plastic that you had a little dot on it, and you would put it in the wall, and then you would get the dots to align with a level, and it would leave a mark in the wall, not a hole, but a mark. And then you could put the nail in and hang your picture. It's brilliant, brilliant. So we did the whole strategy. I put money in, I started working with them, and we had $10,000 to research and development. The patent search was incredibly expensive. So it was $15,000 for a patent. By the way, if you have a product, patents are really important. So now we're up to 25,000. Then it costs 8,000 to manufacture it, 5,000 for packaging. We had $20,000 in overhead expenses for customer support and operations. And then we put a budget in there of $10,000 for marketing. I'm like, piece of cake, no problem. And it was like, okay, then for these 500 packs, the cost is going to be 116 to 136. Okay. Piece of cake. All right. Wow. Wonderful. Great. Guess what happened? When we went out and looked at competitive products, uh-oh, the competitive products for a 20 pack was 20 bucks. All of a sudden, we had a problem. You don't need 500 packs of these dots. You need about 20 of them. And we could not be price competitive with the packaging. And basically, I lost my shirt on this, lost all of the money that I put into this product. I lost it all because if we had actually continued to spend money, we got all the way down to about right here, and I was funding this. If we would have continued to spend money, there's no way we could have been competitive because the market was lower than what it would cost us to make 10,000 units. That was a difficult lesson, very painful lesson. And so we got into the discussion of should we launch this product, and the founders agreed that thank you, Terry, much for putting money in and the money that we put in, but we shouldn't launch this product because we can't be competitive. My lesson was do that research earlier in the process. All right. So let's go into a couple more examples. And then when we're done, there'll be time for me to stop the recording for you to ask questions. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to determine the cost to make your product or service. And you want to mark that price up by 60 to 100% because there are so many costs that you have not considered. And that is the only way that you can ensure there's a profit. Then the fun part is you want to determine how to provide more value based on what the buyer wants. Okay. And by the way, you can do this if you're a solopreneur by that calculation that I gave you a minute ago. You can do this if you're a product. You can do this if you are a micropreneur and you have freelancers on your team. You just have to make sure that you've calculated all of the costs. And here's how you win. So the two pricing models that are commonplace, the world knows them, is market-based pricing, which is what is the market willing to pay, and then cost plus. I used Apple as my example for the winner of market-based pricing. I am willing to pay more for their product than I am for a competitive product because I like it better. Cost Plus, I use Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. It's brilliant. Cost Plus is here's the cost for the product, here's the profit that I want to put on there, and those are the two pricing strategies. Now we get to the one that I subscribe to. What is the specific value to your buyer? How do I make a better product that solves more of the buyer's problem? In every one of my businesses in my portfolio, including Izzy, we win based on value. So I have a marketing company that does a pay for performance. We win based on value. Izzy, we have incredible pricing on the Your Izzy product. Shifco, we can beat our competitors on results. We beat our competitors on value, and we beat our competitors on price. That is what we call a value-based business model. Here's how to think about it. First is you've got to know what your floor is. Your floor is cost plus. Earlier in the session, I showed you how to calculate that. At the end, we'll pause and I can walk through a couple of specific examples if you would like. And you will have the opportunity to go through that. If you are a Shifco member, we have a pricing expert that will work with you on this. Just let your mentor know and will help you actually do this as well. And so the cost plus is the floor. That's the minimum that you should charge no matter what. And that polka dots example is we basically, our cost plus would never have been competitive. We didn't launch the product. Then you've got to know what your competitors are. To do that, just do a Google search for your category. Basically, I would search for, smartwatches. What are the competitive options? That is what is called market based, and that should be the ceiling. Here is what value-based pricing does. Value-based pricing is in between the floor and the ceiling. We are not the lowest cost solution. We're not, but we are way away from market based and what people are willing to pay for those services. I believe we've just created a better business model, and that's what I want to show you how to do. Now, the tips to doing this is never, ever worry about competitors. Never worry about competitors. I used to, when I first became an entrepreneur in 2002, I used to worry about competitors all the time. It's wasted energy. Never. There's plenty of business to go around. But know what your competitors are charging. Here's the thing, when you price based on value, competitors become meaningless. I am not worried about going head to head in any of my businesses with anybody that is doing what I'm doing because I have a value-based business model. And when you focus on value, you build a solution that provides value. You never have to compete. And that's how what I call value wins. What do I mean by that? Here's what a value-based business model is. Value is the equivalent of the benefits of your product and divided by the cost. The difference between that, the benefits divided by the cost, is the value of your product. When you have a high value equation, your business will grow organically, you'll get referrals, and customers will stay and or buy again. And that's what you're ultimately trying to create, which means you spend less on marketing. The reason why I don't spend much marketing in any of my businesses is because I create a high value equation and I get a lot of referrals for all of my businesses. Ignite on Purpose is 100% based on referrals. Succeed on Purpose is about 90% based on referrals. Shifco is about 60% based on referrals. So that combination of creating a high value equation is partly based on pricing, figuring out what the value-based pricing range is, and value is simply the benefits divided by the cost. Okay, I'm going to end with a story, and then I'm going to stop the recording and take some questions and show you how to do this. So this is the last picture I had with my grandfather. He was a saint to me. He was an angel in my life. Short story is both of my parents were raging alcoholics. I grew up incredibly poor, abused in every way possible. But this saint of a man was through everything with me. He took care of me. He took care of me when things got bad. He was an advisor to me, and he was so important. He was really my first entrepreneurial mentor. And he was an entrepreneur in Sarasota, Florida. He had a juice bar. And Terry, you might want to go on mute there. We're hearing you. Lisa, or maybe you could mute her. But he had this juice bar, and one day I came in after school, which is where I would go, and he had these stack of bills, and he put them in front of me, and he said, "Terry, do you know what this is?" And keep in mind, we were dirt poor. I mean, trailer park poor. And I'm like, "It's money, Grandpa." And I was all excited, because we didn't have a lot of money flowing through our house. And he said, "No, this isn't money. This is profit, and profit is the tip your customers give you. Terry, can you put yourself on mute? Lisa, can you put Terry on mute? Okay, I think that did
I
it.
don't have access to it.
Okay, sorry, I should have made you a co-host. He said, profit is the tip that customers give you when you serve them well. And the reason why I always like to tell this story when we're talking about pricing is when you're a conscious entrepreneur, there's guilt related to pricing. And I'm just going to challenge you to really look that guilt in the eye. You have to be okay with profit. No money, no mission, as James Creedon say. And I say no profit, no purpose. You absolutely have to build a profitable business to grow and scale.